If you clicked on this video, you've probably seen the previous parts of the series to what if Deku was Isekai'd into the Narutoverse. However, if you haven't been caught up above should be a playlist that you can click to get caught up and get back to this video. That being said, guys, before I do start today's video, I just want to give a huge shout out to the new channel editor. Now, he is going to be a vital piece to the channel from now on, and I would just really appreciate it if you guys were to go down below and show him some love on his TikTok. Because the man is an absolute Chad, and he's going to be editing your boy's video for a while now. Now, I do have to say a quick thing. Sorry for not uploading yesterday, but I did not have the video done in time, but I actually did end up finishing the script for the entire series, so just so you know, this series will probably have another good 4 parts before it finally ends. That being said, let's get into the story of what if Deku was Isekai'd into Naruto.
Hey Ross, sauce it up.
Following the events of part 4, we pick our story off right where we had left off. As I previously said, Deku and Naruto would have pretty much been going through it for quite a bit of time due to the fact that they ended up losing a kind of a grandfather figure in their eyes, because he was essentially the one who kept them fed for so many years on end. Not only that, but actually was the one who provided them with a couple scrolls to train with, and Hiruzen, well, he was the one who gave Naruto the greatest gift of all. A brother, somebody who he can defend, protect, laugh with, and have a friend. Hiruzen gave Naruto all of those things the second that he decided to let Deku live with Naruto. And Deku feels indebted to Hiruzen because he gave him a brother like Naruto. So both of them at this moment are currently mourning the death of Hiruzen, and they're both not exactly taking it the best way possible. At this point, Jiraiya would have pretty much have already been told about Tsunade and the situation that they're all in, and he would have been informed about the fact that, you know, they need a new Hokage. So what does Jiraiya do? He ends up deciding that he's actually going to go get the 2 knuckleheads and actually end up taking them along for the journey to find the legendary Sannin Tsunade. And so he would proceed to pretty much grab Deku and Naruto out of their houses without telling them anything at all, tell them to grab things and give them like a minute to get prepared before he then says, "Let's go!" And all of them end up going on a journey for about 30 minutes before Naruto's finally able to be like, "What are we doing?" And Jiraiya would say, "Naruto, my boy, we're looking for the 5th Hokage, Tsunade, one of the legendary Sannin." Immediately after hearing this, Deku would be like, "Tsunade! The medical ninja? She was on your team, right? Tell me all about her." And Jiraiya would then be like, "Oh, well, Tsunade is, you know, yada yada yada." After he begins explaining this, he then says, "Wait, kid, I just realized something. Throughout this entire time that I've known you and been training you, I haven't quite gotten to know where you even came from. Did you originally live in Konoha? Were you just a random kid and you just joined Team 7 and now live with Naruto? Or how did that all come down?" Deku would then say, "Oh, it's actually kind of a funny story," before he would then proceed to put his hand behind his head and say, "Well, actually, the last thing I remember from my previous memories was that I was walking around, and next thing I knew, I saw a bright light before I arrived in the middle of the Konoha fields, and then just walked over here, and Hiruzen, you know, he was like, 'Go live with Naruto,' and I did just that." Jiraiya hearing this would be absolutely dumbfounded, not believing a single word that's coming out of Deku's mouth and just being absolutely flabbergasted.
Boy, ain't no way, boy.
This man would have this expression of, "What is this kid talking about?" He would look to Naruto to confirm if he's lying or not, but Naruto would pretty much just nod his head and say, "I know it's hard to believe, but that's the truth. I mean, we've asked him if maybe it was a potential genjutsu or maybe he was abandoned by his parents and he was just told to believe that, but it seems real. He believes it more than anybody, and the stories that he's able to create and the life that he's able to fill with full detail, it doesn't seem as if it's a lie, Jiraiya." Before Jiraiya would nod and say, "Well, regardless of the situation, one thing we now know is how Deku got here." And so this is when Deku would then be like, "But enough about me. What about Tsunade and Orochimaru? What were they like before he turned into the dark side and tried to kill us in the Chunin exams?" Jiraiya hearing this would say, "Oh, that's right, Jiraiya was in the Chunin exams. You guys fought against him, right?" Deku would say that they tried fighting against him, but he completely outclassed them in every way, shape, and form. Jiraiya would have a small smile creep upon his face before saying, Orochimaru is a talented fighter. However, he lost his path. He lost his
You ever had a dream that you
way along the path. And now he's just a different person from the one that was on the team originally. I can tell you some things about Tsunade. Before, they begin walking, and then he begins telling Deku about Tsunade and all of the things she likes doing. This is when Jiraiya halfway would end up deciding that, he actually almost forgot to tell them something. He would turn to the direction of Deku and Naruto before saying, remember when I showed you guys a jutsu and I told you guys that if you won the Chunin exams, I would be teaching you both? He would say, scratch all that. I heard you guys were able to actually fight against the One Tail, Shukaku, and Gaara, alongside Sasuke. I mean, if you ask me, I'm pretty sure that's more than enough of the requirements that I need. Before both of them smile, saying, really? And Jiraiya would have a thumbs up pointing at them saying that he's now going to teach them that jutsu. And so, along the way, he would begin teaching them the first part of the jutsu, the water balloon portion, and teaching them how to channel their chakra through it to make it pop. And so, they would end up trying to learn this before they finally end up arriving at a nearby town, the same place where they would have ended up encountering two infamous Akatsuki members, Itachi and Kisame. And a quick note, the reason that I don't cover all of the events that would ended up happening on the village is because due to Deku being here, the story does not change at all. In Konoha, Itachi and Kisame end up fighting against a couple Jonin senseis. Kakashi gets put in a really weird paralyzed state due to Itachi's Tsukiyomi jutsu, and they end up rushing towards the direction of where Naruto would have encountered the Akatsuki members in the original canon. So Kakashi's still messed up, and they still end up unfortunately arriving to that same town, where Jiraiya would then see a couple of beachy girls, and we'd end up deciding to pretty much go and do some research, if that makes sense. With that said, Jiraiya goes off before buying a hotel room for the squad and saying that they can just wait there. And so he would leave Naruto and Deku to their own devices. When Deku arrives, he would have barely finished learning the first part of the, balloon aspect, and he would have been absolutely tired. So he ends up passing out for about 1 hour before Naruto, he's still learning how to do the balloon portion, but he finally cracks it down before he then hears a knock at the door. Naruto would end up opening the door before being greeted to two red eyes, as well as Kisame. As soon as Naruto sees this, he would slam the door right in their faces following this by using the body flicker jutsu to be right beside Deku and shake him into consciousness, telling him that they have to go now, before weaving hand signs very quickly and blowing a hole through the wall. Simultaneously, Kisame and Itachi would have used their own abilities to break the door down, and then see both not Itachi and Deku, but Naruto and Deku running out towards the roof. They would begin running for about 5 seconds before Kisame would pretty much speed blitz in front of Naruto, and Itachi would go behind them, pretty much trapping them and saying that running away is not an option. And so they both would pretty much end up realizing the circumstances that they're in.
No, God!
Before Deku would suggest that, they need to work together if they have any hope of defeating these guys. But Deku would feel true fear, because this time, not only is he fighting against one insanely powerful opponent, but this time they're fighting against two at the same time. And so they would both end up rushing in Itachi's direction for about 1 minute, with Itachi simply toying with them and Kisame watching in utter just rage because he wants to go at them, but he knows if he was to try it, he would have probably already killed the both of them. And so Itachi's the one who actually ends up handling the business. That being said, after Itachi gives Deku and Naruto the works, he would proceed to turn towards Kisame as one person would arrive on the scene. Sasuke. Sasuke would come in screaming, Itachi! Before he then weaves hand signs for a Chidori and says, Chidori! As he comes in and tries to kill Itachi. However, Itachi would redirect the attack towards the ground, and then he would pick Sasuke up by the throat before grabbing him with one arm and saying that he's still too weak. At this point, he would almost be about to tell Sasuke about amplifying his hate and telling him that he doesn't feel enough hate and he's still too weak, before Deku comes in flying in with a kick saying that Sasuke's not alone and where did he even come from, before then grabbing him and jumping off towards Naruto's direction. And all three of them would be having their backs against each other, as Deku would say that Sasuke is not alone and that if he wants to defeat that guy over there so badly, then they'll both be helping him. Sasuke would have a smile creep on his face because remember, this time around, Sasuke doesn't feel inferior to Naruto because this time he actually was a huge help in taking Guard down, and so Sasuke doesn't feel inferior like he does in the original. Not only that, but this version of Naruto doesn't even actually end up learning the Rasengan yet, so he was never even able to use any of that stuff quite yet, and so, you know, they have a pretty decent amount of time to blow before anything like really serious happens. And so, with that being said, Sasuke would pretty much end up deciding that, you know, he's just, you know, he feels like he can compete with both of them, so he doesn't feel inferior is basically the point that I'm trying to make. Sorry for going back and forth a lot, but yeah. Anyways though, after this is said, Itachi would have a smile under his mask which is invisible to anybody, and everybody would simply rush at Itachi's direction. They would formulate a plan trying to get Sasuke to land a Chidori onto Itachi. However, I'm gonna be quite honest with you guys, it would fail heavily. Now, for this to have happened, Itachi would have had to have been holding back heavily, making it seem as if he was trying and getting caught off guard by some of their attacks, so obviously he stalled long enough for Jiraiya to arrive. And once he did, Jiraiya would immediately end up changing the tide of the battle. Now, when Jiraiya sees the scene that he arrives to, he would immediately tell all three of them to whip out their most powerful jutsu. And Deku would end up actually starting to weave the hand signs for a jutsu that Jiraiya would have actually ended up teaching him. A jutsu that he would have taught him along the way called the Water Dragon Jutsu. And so Deku would actually end up weaving the hand signs before Jiraiya uses the Toad Mouth Jutsu and traps Itachi and Kisame, as Deku would shoot a water dragon straight out of his mouth, and Itachi and Kisame, seeing this huge attack coming at them, would immediately react by trying to, you know, get away. However, Kisame would pretty much end up taking his sword out from his back and slicing the dragon made out of water clean in half, before saying, "Is that all you got?" Deku at this point, seeing this insane display of power, would be absolutely shocked.
Whoa.
At the fact that anybody could literally cut pure chakra, like water version of chakra, clean in half. And after this, Itachi would end up using his Amaterasu to break out of the Toad Mouth Jutsu before saying that they gotta go. Kisame would be kind of confused, wondering to himself why they're leaving such an amazing battle behind, but Itachi would say that it's not worth it for now and that they have bigger fish to fry, as they would both leave. And after this, Jiraiya would stop before promptly then asking them and telling them that he's actually super sorry for leaving them alone, before then saying that they need to be off by now, seeing as they already caused enough destruction in this town. After this, they grab their stuff and then end up paying the fees for the hotel and all the destruction that they caused, and Jiraiya would be left dead broke, before eventually 3 more days would go by, and Deku at this point would have already ended up learning quite a couple more things about Tsunade. One of the things being that she's known as the legendary loser for being such a bad gambler. She would have ended up picking up that habit from the first Hokage himself, and so him knowing that would actually have a smile on his face, knowing that if he ever wanted to, he could actually end up kind of pulling one over on Tsunade. And so they would end up finally, after about 3 days, end up arriving to a bar which he was told that should be the location Tsunade's in. However, when they go there, she's nowhere to be found. They would then promptly go on to search the entire town before realizing that she's probably not there, and they would end up going to one final bar before finally almost giving up hope for finding Tsunade, when suddenly Jiraiya would see the blonde hair and the green robe, and he would immediately have a smile on his face before then walking towards her, sitting down, and Naruto, Sasuke, as well as Deku would end up actually sitting down in that same booth. The reason that Sasuke doesn't get taken back to the village is because this version of Sasuke didn't actually get injured or put into the Tsukiyomi Jutsu, so he ends up coming along. So now we have Deku and Sasuke who end up tagging along for this mission, and when he begins talking to Tsunade about the position of Kage opening up and how they want her to take the spot, she ends up pretty much insulting the Kage. Naruto gets enraged at this before slamming his fist on the table and proceeding to call her a waste of a shinobi, saying that she doesn't know what she's talking about, that those Hokage before her were worth twice as much as she is, and that even a common ninja from Konoha is worth more than she is. Tsunade, hearing this, would get extremely enraged and break the table before then saying, "You want to take it outside, kid?" But before all of this could escalate, Deku would put his hand on Naruto's shoulder and sit him down, as Naruto would say, "She disrespected the Kage, Deku. I won't allow that." Naruto would then look at Deku's face expression before seeing that Deku is clearly expressing signs of anger, but he's not freaking out half as bad as Naruto is. And so, Naruto, seeing this, would end up deciding that he's gonna let his brother handle this. And so, Deku would end up looking at Tsunade before saying, "I hear you like to gamble. How about this? We'll leave you alone, but only after you hear me out. Hidden back home, I have a stash of money, probably enough money to pay back half of your debt." Now listen, he's obviously lying. This man is bluffing out of his butt. And so right now, he's pretty much telling Tsunade that he has all this and that he could offer her. And, she obviously doesn't really believe it, but, what other choice does she really have? So, she kind of just ends up deciding that, there's nothing she can really do. And so she just is like, okay. And, she hears Deku out, and hearing the opportunity of paying back her debt, she immediately jumps on it. And Deku will then explain the catch. The catch is they're going to be playing a game of cards. If he wins, she has to come back and become a Kage. So we would have a brief 20-second, 5-minute time skip, as at this point Tsunade just lost at the card game and Deku is left there smiling. As Tsunade gets enraged, but Deku then reminds her that a deal is a deal. And so now Tsunade is angry and drunk at the same time, so she ends up saying, "Fine."
What?
In a drunken manner, before then telling Jiraiya that she was actually going to be meeting Orochimaru the next day, and seeing as she's now already agreeing to be Kage, she better start telling them details such as this. So she would end up exposing Orochimaru's plan and how he wanted to have his arms healed by Tsunade, and Tsunade telling them this, they would all have enough time to plan an ambush on Orochimaru and Kabuto. So the next day would come around when suddenly Kabuto and Orochimaru would be in a certain area, and Kabuto would be a distance away just watching as Tsunade performs a strange jutsu that doesn't seem to be amongst the medical ninjutsu type of area. And so Kabuto, recognizing this, would throw kunai in the middle of Tsunade and Orochimaru, before then saying that she just basically signed a contract for her death, saying that he was not going to be allowing Orochimaru to be tricked that way. And so she would go in for the offensive attack before Jiraiya then jumps in, and he goes on to pretty much hit Orochimaru so far that they would end up rushing towards his direction. Deku, Naruto, and Sasuke would follow along, as once they arrived to this strange field area, they would all end up getting into their positions to fight. And so everybody would start having their own battles. This time around, it wouldn't be Naruto versus Kabuto, but Naruto, Deku, and Sasuke versus Kabuto. In the original, we saw Naruto doing quite well against Kabuto, and seeing as this time he's now going to have to fight against 2 extra people, I think Kabuto's chances of winning pretty much went down to a blatant 0, unless he pulls something out of his pocket, which was just never seen before. But honestly, I doubt Kabuto could win this encounter whatsoever. That being said, Tsunade and Jiraiya would be doing quite well, that is, until Orochimaru lands a blow on Jiraiya, which causes some blood to splatter, and once she sees that, Tsunade absolutely loses her shit. At this moment, she begins to pretty much tremble in fear, and Naruto, noticing this while he was fighting against Kabuto, would say, "Deku, take it from here, don't let Sasuke down," before Deku would say he's not planning on it. And at this point, Deku would actually end up revealing one of his hidden blades before going in to attack Kabuto and piercing him right in the gut, causing Kabuto's movements to be more sluggish and slow, causing Sasuke and Deku to have much an easier time. And as this is all happening, Naruto would pretty much proceed to start screaming at Tsunade, telling her that she needs to snap out of it, as he would then say that she's a pathetic excuse for a Kage, before cutting his hand and blood would spew out of it, and he would say, "This is nothing. A Kage should never be scared of this. You're a medical ninja. Do what a medical ninja should do. Heal Jiraiya." And Tsunade, hearing this, would have a smile creep around her face before she then sees the image of her younger brother in Naruto, and she would then say that he wouldn't have wanted her to be upset in her own mind, before then standing up and rushing in as she would summon her summoning, and she would then begin to fight against Orochimaru on a more even playing field. And so they would begin to force Orochimaru and Kabuto against the wall, leading to Orochimaru using the reverse summoning jutsu to actually get themselves out of there as quickly as possible. And after that, one person would have actually ended up taking a keen interest in the battle that had just taken place. That person being Izuku Midoriya. He would have been very interested in Tsunade's medical jutsu, as well as the way that Kabuto was fighting. Using those scalpel and actually causing some nerve damage to them was a super interesting way of fighting, and Deku thinks that was a very intelligent way of going about things. So Deku would end up actually asking on their way back to the village if Tsunade could train him, before Tsunade would actually end up saying that, she'll give it some thought. And Deku would begin to pretty much start asking her questions, making Tsunade quite happy and reminiscent of the past. And Tsunade would have a little bit of a like, she kind of sees Dawn in Izuku, if that makes any sense whatsoever. Izuku is kind of making her feel the way that he did, not like in terms of like emotionally romantic, but more in like a happy type of way. Because, Deku makes her feel as if, all of the worries that she's had for the past couple of years are kind of gone. And so she would bring Deku in for a huge hug, bringing him into a full 106 centimeters of pure... You know what I'm talking about, the iggly bigglies, the jiggly tigglies. So yeah, Deku would end up passing out, and Naruto then has to carry him on his back all the way back to the village. After this, Sasuke would have ended up deciding that he was actually going to be staying in the village due to the fact that he watched Orochimaru pretty much get beat and pushed into a corner by Jiraiya and Tsunade. And since Orochimaru doesn't even have his arms and Sasuke still hasn't had an encounter with his curse mark ability, he doesn't really see the point of following Orochimaru's rule. Normally in my what ifs, I don't have Sasuke go off because of personal reasons, but this time it just makes sense. There is zero indications for Sasuke to want to go to Orochimaru whatsoever. And so Sasuke would actually end up staying. And when he does stay, he would end up training for Kakashi for about a week, getting stronger day by day, as Deku would have started his own training with Tsunade personally, and Naruto would have gotten some extra lessons from Jiraiya. So they all definitely get some miniature boosts. However, they all remain having good times for a period of time until eventually Orochimaru would send the Sound Four to arrive and kidnap Sasuke, leaving us in the next arc of the story, the Sasuke retrieval arc. Like for part 6.